that he claims the president was involved in an extramarital affair that led to the birth of a child. He was paid $30,000 to keep quiet. Now, other news organizations have investigated this story and have not found it credible. But the big takeaway here is that now Sajujan says that he's been released from this contract, that AMI has told him that he no longer has to keep quiet, and that's why he is coming forward with this story. What we don't know is the reason behind why AMI made this decision, and could it mean that there are other stories like this that they have squashed on behalf of Donald Trump that could now come to light. It's an indication now of a pattern of people who've been close to the president of the United States, who have been loyal to him, that are now flipping to a certain extent. Among them, David Pecker, who we mentioned, the head of AMI, Michael Cohen, his former fixer and personal lawyer, and of course Alan Weisselberg, who's the chief financial officer. So it's a trend that's not going to make life easy for President Trump as he continues to battle all of these controversies surrounding his presidency. Christy and Victor?
Ryan, any response from the White House about the immunity deals reached by Weisselberg and Pecker?
No, they're not talking about it specifically, Victor, but you can tell that the president is sending a message to some of these folks, in this interview that he gave with Fox and Friends, where he specifically said that he doesn't like people who flip, that he prizes loyalty, and he actually believes that flipping should almost be illegal, is how he described it. This is not something that the president is very fond of at all, but we should also keep in mind that we don't know the extent of their cooperation with federal investigators. We know that Michael Cohen specifically implicated the president in a crime while he was in court, but we don't know how much Alan Weisselberg has told authorities. The initial reporting is that the immunity agreement just involved the investigation into Michael Cohen, and we also don't know exactly the extent of cooperation that David Pecker has with federal investigators. This is really the front end of this problem for President Trump, and the question now is how far will extend into this investigation, and will Robert Mueller be someone who talks to these individuals? That is perhaps the biggest worry for this White House.
Saturday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern, this is that sweet time, that hour where the president typically responds to the challenges of the week. On Twitter, we will stand by to see if he has one. Ryan Nobles for us at the White House. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Victor.
Let's talk to Toulouse Olorunipa, White House reporter for Bloomberg News, and Michael Moore, former U.S. Attorney for Middle Georgia. Thank you both for being here. We appreciate it. Toulouse, I want to start with you, and I want to get to just real quickly this new information this morning about this contract. At the end of the day, how significant are these catch and kill allegations, and what do you make of the timing of it?
Yeah, the timing is incredibly significant because it comes amidst President Trump's basically his worst week in office so far. If you look at what's happened with some of his closest advisors, Michael Cohen pleading guilty, a couple of his very close loyal business associates deciding to get immunity deals and potentially provide information that could be damaging to President Trump. The fact that David Pecker now has an immunity deal, and shortly thereafter we see this story that was potentially going to be a catch and kill story for AMI now released to the public, and President Trump's former doorman has the opportunity to tell his story about what he believes happened between President Trump and a former housekeeper and an illegitimate child. I think it's just adding to a torrent of negative news and negative stories, and it provides information that this was a pattern in practice, that President Trump and his associates were involved in basically keeping a lot of these negative stories out of the news through these hush money type payments, and it shows that this pattern existed long before President Trump took office, and it's going to continue to sort of bedevil him as he tries to, remain president and stay above the fray. He's going to have to deal with all of these negative stories that can continue to come out.
Yeah, Michael, we know that the president values loyalty very much, and to have David Pecker, Alan Weisselberg taking the immunity, and Cohen under oath, of course, in the plea hearing, this is a betrayal, no doubt about it, on a personal and a professional level, you would think. Of these men, who do you think, based on what we know, has the most damaging effect for President Trump?
I've been saying that this is going to, at the end of the day, become a money case, and it's about following the money. And so my belief is that we're probably talking about Weisselberg has the most information that could ultimately be harmful to Trump. He knows where all the bones are buried. He knows what's in the tax returns. And remember that Trump could have shortened this investigation by about a year and a half if he'd just given over his tax returns. And so now we've got the guy who helped prepare those tax returns who's cooperating with the government, and that's going to be interesting. My guess is that somewhere in the cooperation agreement or in the immunity agreement, it says that he'll give truthful information to government authorities. And the question is, will that now extend over to Bob Mueller's investigation? I mean, but remember, the president, he's used to paying for loyalty. You mentioned he likes loyalty. He pays for it, apparently, in all these agreements and confidentiality agreements. And what he has not quite figured out is that America is not his company, and he's not the CEO. And these people are not, they're not his soldiers out just doing his bidding and doing his task. And so he's, he faces some jeopardy simply because I think ultimately these agreements we're going to find more stories about things that have happened during the administration and his business activities before he was president.
Well, the president last night was speaking, and I want to get your take on this, Toulouse. But let's listen to the president talk about Molly Tibbetts last night in Ohio.
When they found out that it was this horrible, illegal immigrant that viciously killed her, all of a sudden that story went down. They didn't want to cover it the way it should have been covered. But what happened to Molly was a disgrace.
Now, we want to point out that there are family members of Molly's who have come out and said, we don't want to politicize this. Is it smart for the president or for Republicans to run with Molly Tibbetts as the story when it comes to illegal immigration, Toulouse?
Yeah, you can expect the president and his allies to seize upon this story despite the protest of the family to not politicize this. This became political almost immediately after the news came out that there was an illegal immigrant who was the suspect, and there was no sort of wait and see, thoughts and prayers. It was an immediate rush to politicizing this issue and talking about the issue of illegal immigration. President Trump has said he believes immigration is going to be the issue that's going to determine the November elections, not the tax cuts, not really the economy. He thinks that what animates his base is this immigration issue, and he wants to use any example he can of crimes committed by immigrants to rile up his base and to push for his border wall and to push for his broader immigration agenda. So you can expect the president and his allies to continue to push this specific story because it fits the narrative that he wants to push, that he started from the first day of his presidential campaign when he said Mexicans were coming into the country and being murderers and rapists.
Michael, real quickly, I do want to get to Manafort because we have heard from Paula Duncan, one of the Manafort jurors.
Right.
She said they did a lot of due diligence. They talked to, and she talked about one holdout in specifically who just could not get past reasonable doubt. Let's listen to her.
We're both Trump supporters, and we feel that President Trump deserves a chance to try to do the job without all of the other stuff going on around him, unless, of course, it's illegal. The law is the law, and my job as a juror and the rest of my fellow jurors was to make sure that the law was upheld. And I feel we did. I wish we could have convicted him on all 18 counts. I feel there was enough information to do that. And that's, I thought America needed to know it was 11-1.
So this is a Trump supporter. What is the significance, Michael, of the conviction for President Trump specifically?
You know, there was plenty of evidence to convict Manafort on all the charges that were brought. And there's nothing particularly unusual about a juror having a holdout or trouble with the idea definition of reasonable doubt. They have to balance what they learn on television and Hollywood versus what the law is given to them by the judge. So I don't know if there's a lot of significance in the particular holdout. I will say this. I mean, I think the significance for Trump is that we're starting to hear the beginning of the story about the people he associated with, how the money began to come in, Russian contacts that were there, and we're starting to really poke holes in and the arguments he's made about, well, Manafort was just a guy on the outside. He was only with me a short time. I think now Bob Mueller has laid the groundwork, and he's given us sort of the first chapter of the book, and he's going to tell the rest of the story. And we're going to see that maybe in the second trial. We're going to see it in the upcoming trials. And I assure you that Bob Mueller is methodical enough that he's already written the rest of the book. We're just learning this as members of the public as it becomes available. So bad day for the president. Anytime we're talking about, you know, the pecker and porn stars and pardons, as opposed to things that go on that matter to the American people, it's a bad day for the president, especially the closer we get to the midterms.
Pecker, porn stars, and pardons. All right.
The three Ps.
Toulouse, yes, he is one for alliteration. You're very good at that.
He gives us a lot of things to talk about. Certainly, it's the 3P week, I guess.
Okay, we'll take that. Toulouse, Olorunipa, and Michael Moore, always appreciate both of you. Thank you.
Glad to be with you.
Sure.
Let's talk about this storm that's over Hawaii. It is weakened, but there is still significant danger for the people there. We'll take you live to Honolulu for the latest on the threat and the torrents of water coming down and surrounding the people from Tropical Storm Lane.
And education officials are desperately trying to agree, of course, on the